Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. This is the Finance Committee meeting. It is 6:32. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I would start off with a Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
United
of the
States
United States of America and to the
and to the
republic
republic for
for
which
which
it
it stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
for all. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20, and on January 16, 2021, Governor Baker signed an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting is being recorded. Well, welcome, everyone. We haven't seen each other in 2 months, so I thought it would be good to check in. I don't think we have anything hot and heavy going on at the moment, as the summer has been quiet, but I thought it'd be a good idea to check in and say hello and get some updates. Can I ask, there's someone on a phone with a 508 phone number. Okay, I think it quieted down. There's some background noise that somebody has going on. Okay. Okay, well, it seems like it's quieted. So if you're not speaking, it'd be helpful if you could make sure you're muted. I think there's a couple of people that are unmuted, and I'm not sure where the noise is coming from. But welcome, everyone. So tonight on the agenda, what I had first is to really get any committee updates or liaison reports. I know in July, we reassigned some committees, and there's some people that might be on new committees. And I don't know if there's anything of interest that anyone has that they'd like to share on their committee updates.
Karen, if I may.
You may.
So I attended the long-term building committee meeting, and some of you that subscribe to the shorelines would have seen the article on this. It pretty much summarized the essence of the meeting. Now, this committee has no real, authority per se. It's really more of a fact-finding committee more than anything else. The bottom line, what it's really turned out to be, that they have had an appraisal done of the building and a engineering study of the building as to what would need to happen to the building if it were renovated for any other purpose other than educational purposes. And that's really where the sticky point comes in. So as a piece of property, as is, it's worth about $11 million. If you were to be able to, sell it as is, yeah, see, we're getting that background noise again. There are only, even though there's 62 acres on the property, there's only about 17 lots that could actually be developed off of that if they were in fact able to do that. It would cost anywhere from $2 to $3 million to demolish the building. So it really doesn't become feasible at all for any builder to want to buy that piece of property and develop it, because the number of lots are limited, and the cost to demo what's currently on that property would really wipe out any profit. So it would be very, very difficult to ever develop that as single family lots in its current, the way it's currently situated. So the best use, if the town were not to retain it, the best use would be if some private enterprise were interested in purchasing it and using it once again as a school. It would meet most building codes if it were retained as a educational facility. But if it were used for anything other than education, there's a significant amount of code requirements that would have to be changed, such as sprinkling the building and doing other renovations that would make it compliant with current building codes. So there were a lot of numbers tossed about, price per square foot, et cetera, et cetera. So, if it were sold for 11 million, it would cost about 20 million or so to renovate the current town hall and perhaps the annex building. So it would still cost more than what the recovery would be from that building to update the town hall. So there's still a lot of things in play. It's still in the hands of the Board of Selectmen as to what they may choose to do with it. But there's a lot of stuff that could still happen with some of the design elements to it. There's far more space in that building than what would be needed for all of the town departments combined. So with every department of town hall being put to use in that building, including the Council on Aging, and using some of it for recreation purposes, it would only occupy less than 50% of the total square feet of that building. So there would still be some use to perhaps lease out space to another entity that may want to use it for classroom purposes on the first floor. But that remains to be seen. So obviously no decisions, no recommendations were made. It was really just laying out the information that was provided by the appraiser and the engineer architect.
Thanks for the update. Gary, you have your hand up.
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's been a long time since I've been here, but it's nice to see everybody. I appreciate the work that the committee did, and I know this has been a long time coming. And what's going to happen to this building now? I guess going on 2 years since parts of the building has been vacated. I guess the administration is still there and what have you. But I just scratched my head because we removed students from this building because it wasn't fit for a school, and now we're talking about potentially having a school there. And
right, right, right. That's the only thing that it's fit for is for students.
Well, but we moved students out of there, so I get that might cost a lot of money to refurbish and get up to speed and all that to make an additional school. But we got to remember that if those were turned into house lots, 17 house lots or whatever the number is, that's permanent tax revenue. I mean, that's tax revenue until the end of time. I mean, so I appreciate that we're looking at different roads, but I would suggest that even though I know development is high right now, the cost of construction is high, 6 to 10% inflation or what have you, but I still think that moving a facility such as whatever you name it, whatever town building wants to go over there, even if it's the old town hall, we vacated that building for a reason. And now, if we're going to go back to the residents and say, okay, we want to occupy that building again, I'm the person that's going to say, wait a minute, why all of a sudden is the building okay now to occupy it? And I said it all along. I think it should be demolished. I think we should, if we can retain a portion of it, maybe mixed use. I think we need to look at a combination of things instead of just saying we're going to put all the town facilities down at that old school.
Well, there were several scenarios. I mean, one of them including the possibility of someone buying it and putting in house lots. The town would get very little for the property if that were true, because of how expensive it would be for any developer to have to get that land up to the point that it needs to be to develop those lots. So, you know, maybe you get $1 million or $2 million because they're going to have to sink $3, $4, $5 million into that. And if they're only going to get 17 lots out of it, there's also an issue about some water, and the water use behind there. So there's some issues about water that may also require some or that would create some problems with that many house lots. So there's some issues to address there about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is easier said than done. I mean, in reality, if we were to let the property go for a minimum amount and be able to recognize new growth and new tax revenue, to me, I think that's a win-win for the town. But saying that we're going to get top dollar for a property that they can't build on, or an investor is not going to be able to make money on, I don't really care what the investor makes. I care about what we're going to be turning into revenue.
Right.
You know?
Well, the sale of the property to a school, to another school, whether it be a university or a charter school, is not that far fetched. I mean, schools like that are in relatively high demand. Whether or not that's the right location for someone to contemplate that. The Diocese of Fall River, I think, has contacted someone at Town Hall about even potentially using that. So the thought of another school buying it is probably not, it's probably not far off. But I think the town still wants to be able to look at some of the uses of that, because either way, not very far down the road, some serious things have to be dealt with at both the town hall annex as well as the town hall. And those things have got to be addressed sooner rather than later, because the buildings are really showing their age. And, you can't drink the water at town hall. It's not really ADA compliant. I mean, there are a lot of issues at town hall that have to be addressed. So I think it's going to take a little while before they completely sign off and say that the town is not going to use it. But we'll see. It's up to the Board of Selectmen.
I appreciate you working that committee, Cindy. Thanks. That was really an eye opener.
Thank you. Thanks. Anything else, Gary?
Oh, that's it.
Gary, are you on two different, or is it you 2 times with Gary and then the phone number?
What happened was I kept on getting booted off the
Oh, okay.
the logon, so I had to log in on my computer and then on the phone.
Oh, all right. So it
So
is.
I think that's where the feedback is coming from, because through the phone, we hear you through the computer as well.
So maybe.
Well, I'm on mute. I've been on mute, so.
Okay, well, your computer is not on mute though.
Right.
Well, my computer doesn't have a microphone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it can't be my
Okay.
computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Hugh, I think you are next. Go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm suspicious of $11 million appraisal for a property which seems to have a lot of problems. I think it would be insanity for the town to convert it to a half-baked, some schools, some this, some other. You move the other things in, now you have more buildings to deal with that will be abandoned or obsolete, etc. Sale to someone who wants to use it for a school is fine. A sale to anybody who wants to use it for anything is fine. Last thing we need is a white elephant, which will, as Gary was saying, we were being told not long ago that it would require significant amounts of maintenance just to keep it going. It needs to be disposed of, and to whomever, that's fine. If it's for development of the land, the price of the building will be low because nobody's interested in the building. But we need to get rid of it. We don't need to have empire building, or we proliferate more internal classrooms, etc. Someone else comes in and buys it for school, that's fine. The town should get rid of it. I'm very glad to hear dollars being mentioned, however, because the last time around, nobody seemed to care about what anything would cost. So that's improvement.
Thank you, Hugh. Bob?
One of the things that amazes me is that nobody is talking about cost. We already have some fixed costs coming with the new Diamond, whether we like it or not. We also have fixed costs coming with the new Bristol Aggie. At the meeting that I attended on the 17th of last month, the Infrastructure Committee, everybody had a wonderful idea of what to do with water and sewage, but nobody had an idea on how to pay for it, because that's the next big boondoggle. It's estimated it'll cost around 25 million. And I sent everybody a
Bob, can we just stick on, can we get your update on that in a second, but can we just stay on the school for a second, if you don't mind?
yeah,
Before-
what I'm saying
okay.
is it's all, it's coming out of the same pocket, whether you like it or not. And I've got town employees who have told me personally that they are going to vote against the override, mainly because they never get anything. So they said, it would be foolish for us to vote for an override, cost me out of my tax money along with everything else I got to pay for, and we get no benefits from it. So incorporating those two things, and Martin has hit the nail on the head, these are going to be paid for. And we're talking about millions. I feel like I'm dealing with Mr. Biden.
Thanks, Bob. Sue, I know you have your hand up, so I'll entertain you next, and then I'll ask my questions. Hi, Sue. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Haven't heard from you in a long time.
No, I'm still around. My question is, if we were to use it for the town hall, you were indicating that only a certain percentage of the building would be filled. Did they take into account that a lot of the offices need a lot more space? I could use triple the space that I have. I have a lot of records that are permanent records and have nowhere to store them. I could also definitely benefit from a reconfiguration instead of running back and forth across the hall.
I believe that they did take the existing square footage and added a factor to that. I cannot be 100% sure of what that factor was that they added for growth, but I think it just kind of came down to a point where, well, it doesn't really matter because there is so much excess space still available. So they did use a factor for space, including the Council on Aging. Now this also includes Council on Aging moving there, as well as space for recreation, which is currently in the annex, because they were very interested in the gymnasium space. And I know I did not quote it, and was quoted in the article in the Shorelines. The total cost to renovate, just purely based on the square footage basis, was $29 million to bring it all up to code.
Okay, thank you.
And as far as I know, they put the whole proposal on the town's website, so I think it's accessible to anyone. I haven't looked at it, but I think I read that it was there. So I think we can go to the town website if you wanted to look at any details on it. Cindy, do you have any idea? Do you know what the next steps are? Did the select board, was it presented to the select board? Did the select board say they're going to make a decision at any point in time? Do they feel they need more information? What's the next step?
So Brian Valcourt now chairs this committee, and he said that he would take it to the board. I've been traveling for the last 3 weeks, and I have not had the opportunity to look at any of the select board recorded meetings. So I don't know if it has been brought up to the select board or not, as of this time. We do not have another meeting scheduled. So I don't know where that was. Brian left it that he would take it to the Board of Selectmen, take the findings to the Board of Selectmen and see where that goes. So it's kind of up in the air as far as I'm concerned. I
Mhm.
believe, I know for a fact that that meeting was also recorded. So if you wanted to hear the details directly from the architect and appraiser and engineer, that meeting was recorded as well.
Thank you. Just a comment. I mean, we as the finance committee are not, haven't been asked to vote on this, or, I don't believe we've been asked for what our opinion is yet. So, I'd be curious if they're gonna seek our advice on recommendations or not. So I guess we can reach out to find out what's the next steps, and, you know, is it a discussion that they'd like to entertain with the finance committee? Does the, you know, I heard of tonight, a few members had opinions one way or the other affirmatively. So I guess I can reach out to see if that's a discussion to be had. Because at some point, you know, there needs to be a decision made and there needs to be a plan. And things need to execute. You know, lack of a decision is a decision. So, and it's a costly one by doing nothing.
I will check with the town administrator.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
I think if it's all laid out in front of us, just that, a plan, like, what do they plan on doing with the building? What are the other alternatives? Not only does the finance committee have to weigh on this, I think the residents should also weigh on it. This is a major piece of property that we should not just let, you know, just us 9 and then the other 5 or whatever make a decision on. I think this needs to be brought up to the public. They have probably a lot of input. I'm sure the neighbors will have plenty of input, all the abutters. So for us to make decisions on their behalf, I don't think really is the way to go. But that's only my opinion.
Yeah, I know early on, I thought there was some public meetings and some surveys and some questions. And so I don't know if more will be had but you know, that's what I'm just wondering what the next steps are and what's the next hurdle and what the time frame is for the next steps.
Do you know if that property is zoned commercial?
It is not.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, it is not.
So there's a lot of things. Everybody could have to go in front of planning, and this is like on and on, you know. I think you're right. We're in the infancy of this. And just to make a decision without really knowing what we could even do there, before the horse.
Yeah, what's the next step? What, you know, where do we go? Do we need more information, or do we have sufficient information that we just need to weigh the pros and cons and determine the steps? Or that's a question for the select board. Hugh, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to chime in with what Gary was saying. This is a major financial issue. There's absolutely no way in which the selectmen can just do something. Because for one thing, it's going to require money. And it's not going to be little bits to come out of the operating budget. It's going to require funding of some variety or something. It's going to be a major financial transaction, which means that the finance committee had better be on board with whatever conclusion is proposed, because otherwise town meeting is going to have to vote on a major financial issue. And if there's a difference of opinion about it, Bob's point is on money. It's a major additional expense, however it goes, anything other than a sale. And the selectmen don't have the authority or the ability to pay for it. It has to be a town meeting vote of some variety. So everybody had better be on the same page, or it's going to sit there moldering indefinitely.
Thank you, Hugh. Buzzy?
Yeah, my understanding is, Cindy, you're our member on that committee. Is that correct?
If there are two of us, both Larry and myself.
Maybe that answers the question I was going to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think there'd be some value in our setting up a committee of the Finance Committee to somewhat independently, but at the same time in coordination with that committee, to investigate, come up with plans to try to deal with what I agree is a big financial problem for the town at the moment?
Well, I think by virtue of having two members represented on the committee, I believe that, you know, the select board probably feels that there's representation there. Once again, this committee has, neither the finance committee nor the long-term building committee has any real authority. So, you know, I think that in both cases, they are sounding boards for the select board to hear. You know, I suppose we could have a separate committee. I don't really know what that would achieve, since we have two members already on that committee, but.
Well, I guess it depends on how you feel about the way things are moving. Neither of you are chair of the committee, is that correct? Maybe you are?
No, Brian Valcourt is the current chair. This was the first time that they had a real, I would say, a real organized committee. In the past, it's been a little bit more haphazard, only because they never had any real direction nor connection to the select board. Since Brian has stepped in, that committee seems to have a little bit more order. And now that they have this architect's report and an appraisal report and a little bit more anchoring of what some of the possibilities are. Before it was all just a lot of talk, you know, as Bob said, you know, it's just a lot of talk and no dollars attached. Now that they've put some real numbers down on the square footage as to how much it is to renovate various spaces. I mean, they went through the whole renovation of, you know, even the existing town hall to show that the proceeds from the sale of one could be applied to help the overall condition of the current space that's there. You know, this would even include like taking the highway department and putting them in the rear of this building. So, I mean, there's there would be a lot going on in the renovation of this building, with the land at Central Village being perhaps more attractive or conducive to redevelopment than that space down on Main Road. So these were just some of the things that were discussed. So we'll see. But once again, I don't know if they took it to the, if the select board has been notified or been brought up to date onto as to what has happened so far. I really don't know. Like I said, I've been away for 3 weeks. I'm still away. I'll be back in town by Friday.
So, I mean, I from my point of view, it's a matter of whether you feel that at this point, or perhaps very soon, the committee is seeing the kind of urgency that some of us are suggesting this issue has. But if there comes a point where we feel things are not moving the way they are, I don't see why it could not be possible for us to set up our own committee to investigate and make recommendations.
Right. I understand that. I guess I'll wait to hear back from Jim Hartnett and see where that stands with the select board at this point, and see if Brian has brought it up to them. I don't even know if Shauna is back at the meetings. Karen, do you know if Shauna has returned to the board?
I don't know.
Yeah. So, Shauna's been out. So for the last 3 weeks, they've been operating on a little bit of a short string. So I don't know what's been done, but I will find out and report back.
Great, thank you. I mean, and the other suggestion we could have is that we could invite the committee to come to our meeting and give a presentation and give us an update on everything. But let's wait to hear where Cindy comes up, and then we can talk about it at the next meeting.
Just to be clear, the committee made no recommendation, one way or the other. This was purely a fact-finding meeting, and although Brian was clearly biased in his view of it, that he wanted to retain the building and use it for that, he did leave the door open, however, that if someone was interested in purchasing the building, for a large amount of money, then that would certainly change things. So we'll see.
Great. You have your hand up. Thank you, Cindy.
I'm just going to say that I think we should not be fixated with that $11 million figure, because maybe that is the figure in terms of value as a school building for somebody who would purchase it for that purpose. The value is in the eye of what the person is going to use it for. And if that is not for the purchaser, figure is a highly flexible one depending upon what's in the offing. For real estate development on a residential basis is pretty low because you're probably going to tear it down in terms of the building. Now you're talking about the land. If it is a rezoning for commercial, which could happen, and again, it's the land. So I'm concerned about the ongoing expenses, renovation, proliferating buildings which are now obsolete, multiplying the number of buildings that need to be dealt with, but also the ongoing, not only renovation, but initial carrying expenses for a white elephant, which is the way I certainly look at it. Nothing new, but I think it'd be terrible if we have the selection declare they're going to do something which nobody else is in favor of, and now we go to a stampede, a town meeting, and nothing happened. It has to be thought through.
Thanks, Hugh. Does anyone else have anything else? So we can move on to another committee update. Great. Bob, can you give us your update now on the infrastructure committee? I'm curious to hear what the committee is, what the charter is, and I think you had your first meeting already, so love to hear what's happening there.
That's correct. We had our first meeting on the 17th of August. It lasted several hours, and it was chaired by one of the selectmen. We discussed some of the things that had already began before we had this meeting. The whole project will be in 3 phases. Right now, phase 1 is done. There's going to be a transfer station to move sewage somewhere around the meatworks. There is one already in existence near White's of Westport. They're going to build another one around where Pete's Nursery used to be because of evaluation and the flow, and you can't run a sewer system without water. One of the things that nobody wanted to discuss was the cost of money. Again, we're going to go back around full cycle to square one. This all has to be paid. We have people with lots of great ideas, except they don't have any money in their pocket for it. And I find that sadly lacking, to be honest with you. Before I was to take a vacation, buy a car or do anything else. I want to make sure I can afford it. And I can't be ignorant of other things that this town is already committed to. So when I hear all the discussion about the old high school, about the sewer line, we haven't even got the bill yet for the new high school we just built on Old County Road. So there's 3 major projects right there that are going to be paid for. And now we have a discussion about an override. And I'm saying, you got an 80-year-old man who's got Parkinson's. He's living on Social Security. How does he afford all this? Do we tax him out of town?
Bob, can I ask you, you said they've already committed to it. Are you referring they as the town, and what do
Yes,
you mean?
I'm talking about people on the committee, some of which own businesses on Route 6. Others who were there who also own businesses on Route 6. If I owned a business on Route 6, my value of my business would markedly go up. Except the old man who lives next door with Parkinson's, who's going to pay for this. What about his life? And so I'm looking at this, and one of the problems that I see, if you were coming into the bank looking for money from us, one of the things we would want to know is how you're going to pay for this. And more importantly, what are the adverse effects? And you got a lot of house lots that are subdivided and grandfathered in the Greenwood Park area, and they can't get sewage. Once the sewer line goes through, you can now build on that. So what kind of house are we going to have put on that property? A mansion or a ticky-tacky little house? And how much money is that going to raise? Nobody wants to deal with the financial questions. They ignore it. Everybody doesn't have the wherewithal. And I talked to some people who own businesses along Route 6 who said to me, it would be difficult for some of our customers to be assessed value because nobody's talked about how we're going to pay this. Is the whole town going to pay this? Just the people who are going to benefit by this? Are we going to do it by precinct? How are we going to do this? I haven't heard that yet.
So Bob, can we just back up a step? So
Sure.
I think I still don't fully understand what the committee is, what the committee is charged to do. I appreciate everyone can have an opinion on what you're talking about, but I'd like to refrain at the moment for opinions and really just understand what is the committee charted to do.
Put water and sewage on Route 6. It's a mindset already.
Well, it's been discussed for years for the town. It's been discussed that infrastructure is an important thing in order to ever develop Route 6 to be anything of commercial value. There needs to be water and sewer. There's ARPA funds that are being funneled in state funds that are funneled to it. So is that what you're talking about? The dollars are committed, those funds?
Karen, also, if you're familiar with that area, and I'm very familiar with that area because when I was a teenager, we used to walk on that area. The cat nine tails are taller than me. So you got a lot of land there that cannot be developed because it's wetlands. So I'm saying to myself, who's going to benefit at what cost? And that hasn't been discussed. And I would think that would be one of the first things you would discuss. And it hasn't been.
Well, you've had one meeting so far, is that right?
Right. But there's been lots of meetings with different quasi groups about this. This is like the formalization of that.
And are
Maybe
you
it's coming
saying
from-
that members of other members, either, I don't know, the planning board or other members, are you saying that there are no numbers, or they just have not been presented to the meeting yet?
No way to pay for it yet.
Okay, but there's a
That's
plan.
That's where
There's
you,
a plan and cost estimates, and I'm thinking there's proposals of certain funding to be allocated, and it's going to be done in stages, right? So there is a plan, and there is estimates of costs, right? I'm just trying to understand.
when you deal with government, we're here to help you. And therefore, we're gonna get money from the feds, we're gonna get money from the state, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't seen any numbers and any kind of commitments.
Mhm.
We've got chasing rainbows. And that's one of my problems with dealing with water and sewage. What's the practicality of it? Who's gonna benefit? At what cost? And how do we pay for it? I would think those should be at the top of the list, and they're not.
And I'm sure you asked that question at the meeting, and is there going to be a future discussion that's going to be focused on that?
You know, when you get the soft shoe routine, that's what I got.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Sue, you have your hand up.
Yes, the only thing I can add to that is that my understanding is there are some grant funds that they are pursuing to cover some of the cost. Of course, that will not cover fully the cost, but also the normal process, and there has been some discussion about this, when sewer lines are put in, it's considered a betterment, and it is billed through the tax bill to the homeowners or the property owners abutting the sewer line, because the cost, the property values increase just by having that sewer line there. And it would be a process that would be, those betterments would be billed through the tax bills.
Thank you, Sue. Cindy, you have your hand up.
The only comment that I have is that it was my understanding that the money that has been committed to be spent are for the studies for the water and sewer lines as to come up with the plan. This is no commitment to actually facilitate nor start any kind of construction of the plan, that it was going to cost several $million just to come up with the plan. And that's still the phase that they are in. I don't believe anyone has committed to completion or to even beginning to lay down a single pipe until they have the full report of how much this is going to cost and how feasible it will be to tie in at both ends. So I think it's still in the very early stages, but that was my understanding.
That is correct.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions on the infrastructure at this time? No. Okay, great. Does anyone else have any committee updates that they need to share?
Karen, this is Gary. Both Cindy and I met with the personnel board, and we had to readjust it was by a request to readjust the town planner's, the potential town planner's salary, because the salary range that they were looking at was not attracting any candidates. So it wasn't unanimous. There was a lot of discussion about, not only his position, but other positions in town, and how competitive the town is, and how we can retain people in the town. And having talked to a few people, along the way, I think it behooves us, and I brought this up to Tim King a while back, and what happens is, when someone gets, let's say, non-union, so we deal with non-union, so it's a department head, that person gets a raise. Now, 2 or 3 people that feel that they're behind the eight ball will also request to get a raise. So without any kind of scale, so everybody's going off and doing their own salary surveys. They can contact any one of their own associations, they can get all that data, and they can present it. So my opinion was, and I mentioned this at the personnel board, we need some kind of, and whether or not it costs $40,000, $50,000, you take it out of ARPA money or whatever, we need to set a standard in town. We need to set grades and salaries and steps and scales so that when we're placing people in the right position, being able to retain those people, not having them, for instance, the police department, train, we incur the expense, and then they go bye-bye to another community. So, and it eliminates a lot of the turnover. But until we do that, we're going to continue to have departments feeling like, and rightly so, feeling like someone got a raise, now I got to get a raise. Someone got a raise, now I got to get a raise. I think that we need to engage and maybe discuss this with the selectmen, that they have to finally come to the realization that people are leaving because it's a competitive market. And if Westport can't pay competitive rates and salaries, then we become a training ground at an extraordinary amount of money. So that's one thing that we mentioned at the personnel board, but it kind of got to the point where it's every department head coming to us and saying, okay, we need to have a salary increase. And with that study, that would put people in place, compare it to other communities that are like kind to Westport, and not have this back and forth between non-union members and union members. It would look at both. I brought this up to Tim King a while back. It went absolutely nowhere.
Thanks, Gary. Are you, so is the thought that someone from the personnel board or maybe would produce a report or suggestion and then try to get into the select board's agenda at some meeting to present some of the things that you just discussed?
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy either to sit down with Cindy or take it on myself to give the select board some references and some firms that do this. We just had one done a few years ago. Everybody's on a scale, so that when they come in, they fall within a range, depending on experience. And then there's COLA increases on that. But I think it's all over the place. And employees are it's just the nature of the beast, if you will. If you've been here a long time, you have seniority and you have a lot of time in the town, you expect to have at least a competitive salary. And that's what these studies do. And they present job descriptions. We look at the job descriptions, they're all over the place. So it's a package, and I wouldn't mind putting something together for the select board to present to them, maybe during one of our meetings or something, and go.
Or ask to be placed on the select board's agenda, and then you can make the presentation at the select board meeting directly. That might be something good to do. But no, it's and if other towns are doing it, if that becomes the standard, and I think members of the select board, and we've become aware at the finance committee as budgets are presented to us that salaries are just not competitive in Westport, and hence why we're trying to recommend and do whatever we can do in part to have an override to get the expenses in line with what's the market. And there's just there's expense issues all around the town of Westport. So
and quite frankly, the personnel board shouldn't be the ones that are weighing in on whether or not somebody should get, as we did the last meeting, a $5,000 raise, or that should already be in stone. When the person gets hired, they're brought in at a scale and a step, and they go from there. But to have everyone potentially come to the personnel board, that's not really the place where the stuff needs to be vetted.
Right.
Well, also some of that too was generated from the fact that their budget was funded at at a certain dollar amount, and in order, I think more than anything else, it became a problem because they wanted to exceed it and they knew that they could afford it in the current year. So, so their budget also becomes a limiting factor. because their budget was approved for a certain dollar amount for the town planner. You know, they had an attractive candidate that could get better money elsewhere. And, you know, that's a problem. It was certainly brought up as well that, you know, other communities may pay more, and you can say, well, you know, they're bigger towns, you know, the job is bigger. They also have a lot more support around those positions. So, you know, they, as was brought up in the case of Dartmouth, for example, you know, there's a town engineer, there's an engineering department, there are other people that can assist the town planner in not having to chase everything down themselves. So there are a lot of factors that kind of come into what the correct salary would be. You know, I agree with Gary 100%. I mean, I think it would be great to have an in-depth comparison and a scale of what some of these positions should be, because I think a lot of them are still stuck, you know, back from 10 years ago, and they haven't really been updated until someone leaves. And so we've had this issue, you know, the same thing happened with, you know, when the town accountant left, and, you know, she left for a much higher paying position. And then, you know, it starts the domino effect as to how much the replacement should be paid, how much an assistant should be paid. You know, they're running into that even with union positions, and that, you know, we'll see where that goes.
Right, and until you put a plan in place, and these firms will do this, they will go ahead and they go right down to the clerks. You know, if you're a department head, you have 3 clerks in the office, that's all part of the study. So when they do their comparison and their analysis, they're making sure they're comparing it to like-in-kind communities that have the
Right.
same model. So,
Right.
I mean, I can put something together, see where it goes.
I know that Sue had her hand up earlier, but I know that she's facing a similar problem in her department, where she's competing with another department in town. You know, it's the school for a comparable type of position. The school department was paying $3 an hour more. Both of them are union positions, but it's different bargaining units. So you know, you've got competitiveness within the town, let alone trying to compete with other positions outside of the town. So it's a very difficult environment. It's a very, very difficult environment. And I think that, you know, we have so many employees now. You know, we don't have a human resources department. We don't have any place that people can go if it's, you know, regarding insurance or whatever. They end up in Sue's office. If they've got a problem, an employee problem, they end up in Jim Hartnett's office. So it's, I think it's difficult. I think it's a very difficult environment.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sue.
Couple of things. One is, I had just recently gotten permission from the union to upgrade the position in my office, and had the selectman's office approve it last night. And I am still not sure where it's going to go, because the union membership is having concerns about it at this time. It's critical that we include the union members in a classification study. Over the years, a lot of things have become distorted in the different positions. Some positions have taken on additional duties, others have, you know, requirements have changed, the job descriptions and have not changed for many years and such. So it does need to be reviewed for the union membership as well as non-union. And just to clarify, the school, I'm advertising that position, or was advertising the position, at $20.27. The school personnel are making $31.16.
Could you repeat that?
I'm advertising the position at $20.27, which is 90% of the full salary for that position, which is 22, I forgot the exact number, roughly 22.50. And the school department payroll personnel and HR personnel are making $31.16 per hour.
In the same union?
No, they are not the same union. The school department personnel are non-union. Our personnel are union.
And is the function of the position essentially the same, or is
Actually, the person in our office does all the onboarding, terminations, takes care of all the retirees for all town employees, both town and school. We do all the benefits for both town and school.
Yeah, it's a big disparity, and I think that it's now even worse because the market is so competitive. Add that on to we have no basis for anything. You know, there's no common ground between either the school and like Cindy said, even between departments. So, you know, I don't know.
There
just
definitely needs to be a classification study done. The last time anything was done as far as a classification study that I recall was back in the 80s, around the time that I first started back in 87.
Well, like I mentioned, I'll put something together and maybe try to get a date for the select board and have that maybe go to the firm that we use, look at other firms, and just even have the firm come in as as just a tutorial of what they do, and that would be free of charge, and you know, they could look at one department and check out how much disparity there is along the whole town.
Gary, I'll help you out any way I can.
Okay, that would be great, Cindy. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. I think I think it'd be helpful to raise the level of awareness, and if there is a fee for it, to just get an estimate of what the fee is, and then it needs to be consideration as the annual budget's prepared. Thank you for volunteering to do that. Appreciate it. Does anyone else have any other committee updates at this time? I see no hands. Okay.
Oh, Karen, the audit committee is going to meet next week.
Oh, okay.
So I'll report back the meeting after. The management letter was very minimal as far as any infractions or any concerns that they had. So I don't expect it to be too difficult, but we are meeting with the treasurer collector next Monday.
Great. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is our placeholder, which is an override discussion. I have nothing to discuss regard. So we've been on hold as far as everything. The select board has not moved, as far as I know, in any direction. So I don't have anything to add. I don't know if anybody else does, but I have nothing to share.
Do we know, I guess this is really not an override question, but I could lead into the override question, or parts of it. Have we got free cash certified, and do we know what our revenues are so far year to date?
I have not seen anything, but I would say it's extremely early for free cash, but I don't want to overstep Nicole, who I think is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi. Some of the year-end issues from last year is trickling into this year, but I'm hoping to have free cash certified in the fall like we used to, October, November. I'm thinking more November, beginning of December. Nobody has said anything about needing or wanting a special town meeting, so there's no super urgency when I met with DOR. of getting the free cash certified, like an emergency or whatever. But I'm hoping to have it done before the tax rate is set. That's my goal. Sue and I are working hard in getting all our numbers to match, and just moving right along.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, what could we discuss about, an override when that, I don't know if we even picked off from where we were left off last year as far as discussion with the select board. It seems like we're in, neutral on this. And I would just hope that when we do receive free cash and we do look at whatever's gonna fall out for revenues, that, we have the ability to balance the budget. Because I'm just afraid with all this escalation on fuel and energy costs, we're gonna be off on those line items at least.
Mhm.
You know,
No, absolutely. I mean, what I had been hoping would never happen is happening, is that, the override discussion has come to a halt. We're going to be very soon going into the new fiscal year budget process, right, starting in October. And I don't know what the town administrator is going to put together for instructions on that budget. So I think it's going to be far tighter than before. So I guess we'll await. In another month, I would expect that they will be starting to roll out the fiscal budget process, and we'll go from there. But
So I think that the select board has purposely avoided this issue until Diamond clears. They really do not want to put anything in front of the voters or tempt the voters with any other discussions until that Diamond vote clears. I think that it will pass successfully with an override, given the sentiment at town meeting that there were so many people that came out in support, given the low numbers of turnout for elections, although in November you would tend to have a more voters. But I think once that clears, then it will be a lot easier to have that discussion, for fear that either Diamond will be with inside the budget or outside the budget. So I think once the fate of that is known, I think it will be a little bit easier to determine where it's going from here.
yeah, I agree with that in some sense, Cindy, but we needed an override with or without the Diamond approval. We were in the hole last year. We just made it work. The
Right.
schools came in at a lower amount, and whether or not they can still do that this year, that remains to be seen. And we've taken the Diamond out of the picture. Add Diamond now back into it. Now we're really stressed the budgets. And I agree with Karen. I think that we should still be having this discussion going forward as far as planning, or keep the ball rolling and let people know that it's still on the back burner. I think the risk that we run is we don't talk about it anymore. People think it's fine. Everything's fine. This is the risk that this is what we go through every single year. Quite frankly, people think that the budgets are balanced. We got through another one. But really we're going nowhere.
Sue, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
Oh,
the
go ahead, you.
school blew the override out of the water with their 42 new additional hires that they were proposing. Until something changes in that area, we're wasting our time talking about overrides, because perception in town, for many I've heard, any money will go to the schools and will never affect anybody else. Unless there's cooperation on that front, it's a waste of time. It's necessary, but it's still a waste of time.
Thanks, you. Sue?
Yeah, just that we are still working on things for the override. We're looking at forecasting out. We've got a couple DLS and a couple other things working on 5-year forecasting to help plan for this. And there is still a lot in the works towards an override. So it hasn't been forgotten. Been on the back burner for a couple of months now, but we're going to be actively working on it again.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Well, you know, I agree. A 5-year forecast, I think, is a very important tool to this. I think that helps demonstrate as each year goes and the squeeze that's going to happen. And there's, you know, going to have to be an estimate of cost-cutting measures in that 5-year plan. And so that should maybe open up some eyes as to what the numbers are. So I think that's a very valuable tool. So that's encouraging to hear that that's being worked on. So look forward to seeing that. So thank you for your behind the scenes efforts that you keep doing on the override. So thank you. So let's see, the next thing on the agenda, if nothing else on the override, which doesn't sound like we have anything new to discuss, is the minutes of the July 12th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. If anyone would like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Second, thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? Nope. Then I will do a roll call for the minutes. Bob,
Yes,
Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Buzzy,
Aye.
Gary,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes, aye.
Zach,
Aye.
and Karen, I. Thank you so much. So the only other discussion is any topics for next meeting. If we know of any, you can certainly email me at any time and we'll get it on the schedule.
Karen, I assume the next meeting is next month?
Yes.
Or-
Right. At this point, I think our second Tuesday of the month is totally sufficient. And then we will go from there. I have no correspondence. Bob, did you want to, you had mentioned you wanted to talk about a meet and greet for the Finance Committee. Did you have anything that you wanted to suggest or propose?
yeah, Karen, we began the meeting and a lady that I did not recognize, it turns out it's our secretary. I wouldn't know if I ran across her in the street, never mind 2 new members. And I think it's a disservice to those people, not for them to have contact with the committee, know who they're working with, and the same thing with us, knowing who we're dealing with. And I was going to have a couple of people come over with them at my house, and then because of the state open meeting laws, make sure that we never have a quorum, but it's an all-day process. It would be a lot easier to sit down all at one time at a posted meeting and do that task. So I wanted to suggest that today.
So what is your suggestion for the committee then?
I'm sorry I didn't get you.
So what's your proposal or your suggestion? Are you saying to have a small?
It doesn't have to be a town hall. It can be any public place, and including the library or anywhere, and sit down and meet and greet as you would new employees working for your business, and have a sense of their background, what they believe is their strong points, and for us also to speak with them, giving them our background and what we believe are the strong points we bring to the committee. So they have some kind of a working knowledge of who they're dealing with.
Okay, who is that for again? I'm a little lost. You mean for new employees, of the new members, Bob?
I can't make out what you're saying, Gary. You're all distorted.
I said, are you talking the new members of the committee? You wanted a meet and greet with the new members?
Yes, and our new secretary, as well as everybody.
That would be helpful for me as a new member. I would be amenable to that.
And Bob, is there an agenda that you would like the committee? Is it a casual meet each other, or are you suggesting it to be an educational kind of meeting? I guess I'm just trying to understand. I'm just trying to understand what your proposal would be.
Yeah, it would be more social, Karen. But social tied into business as to what our backgrounds are and what their backgrounds are and how we can contribute to the meetings. It might also be helpful for you based on somebody's background, being assigned to a committee. So you get right now it's just a shot in the dark.
I just have a suggestion, maybe, Bob, I don't know, maybe, I mean, I'm not talking about, we do this, I know there's a little bit of concern about people meeting again, but would the group consider meeting at least once live to do just this, to do just what you're speaking of?
That's exactly what I was going to suggest, is that maybe the next meeting, we could have an in-person meeting.
Right. And then we can informally introduce ourselves at the beginning of the meeting. I mean, I don't know if everybody's willing to do that. I know we were back and forth on whether or not we wanted to meet now or we wanted to wait. And I know that this is much easier for a lot of the members, but in a sense, some of the groups have already gone back to, most of the groups have gone back to in-person meetings. So I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I'm not the one that you'd have to make a decision, but at least one meeting, maybe to accomplish that.
Hugh, go ahead.
I would support that approach. Most of the world has gone back to in-person. There are only a few holdouts, paranoids among us. It's a very good way to do it. Just have a meeting.
I'm sorry, I missed that last sentence, Hugh.
I said have a meeting as we have had in the past. We had a chance to move Bob and Gary have been talking about. I would say that a very, very high percentage of the country, at least, is meeting in person these days, including schools.
Thank you, Hugh. Fuzzy?
Yeah, I mean, I have some health limitations because of my chemotherapy, but number one, if people don't think it's strange for me to wear a mask, if we're going to be in a small room, I'd be happy to do that. Or you might just want to meet without me, but I would make every effort to try to arrange to be there. And besides, I mean, I can check again with my physicians about the status of my immune system at this point.
If you have a particular reason, Buzzy, I was not challenging that. I agree. But
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I didn't think so.
Cindy, go ahead.
The select board meeting room is now also set up for hybrid meetings. So you can have someone dial into the big screen and they can participate in the meeting. So to the extent that if we did have an in-person meeting next time and there were some members that were unable to attend or not comfortable attending or for whatever reason, they can still participate without any difficulty. The long-term building committee met and we had several members. In fact, all of the presenters were remote and we could communicate with them just fine. They came up on the screen and it was like they were in the room. So it is set up that it could be done in a hybrid fashion as well.
Well, that's good to know.
So I would make a motion that next month, if next month we meet, we attempt to have a meeting in person.
Second.
How about, can we post it as a hybrid meeting just in case members want to be, present there or home or wherever they are?
Yeah, we can,
Can I-
we can check with them and see how, if it has to be posted as a hybrid meeting, but, as long as there's an open meeting somewhere that people can attend, I don't think it matters, but we can check with the board and
Town clerk.
see, yeah, the town
Yeah, I
clerk, and
think-
see if that's possible.
I think Senator's right about that, but as long as remote meetings are authorized, obviously, some people are present that shouldn't be unauthorized. The remote issue is the one that is out of the ordinary from historically. So I'm sure you're right, that if hybrid's fine, if remote's okay.
Right?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that on the
Right.
agenda, on the agenda, we have the link, we have that link.
Right, because I think if, I guess my only question is, it defeats the purpose if 3 or 4 members choose to stay hybrid, then only 4 or 5 of us come to the meeting. It kind of defeats that purpose that we were trying to achieve. So,
I don't think, Karen, I don't think it defeats. It's not as complete, but it still is a step in the right direction.
okay,
I was only proposing it for the next meeting, though. My motion was for the next meeting.
Yeah, I would say, let's see how it goes, and then if it works out, works out. If it doesn't, then we turn to what we've been doing, I guess.
so Cindy, do you know in the meeting that you had at the building committee, who was the navigator of the technology that did that was able to?
I believe, well, I believe Jim Hartnett was doing the driving.
And so who would be the navigator of this committee?
I will find out.
Okay.
It's usually cable access that sets that up. So it'd be Westport Community Cable that would do that. Val or something like that would, or whoever's running the show that night. It's pretty much automated. The cameras move to whoever's on. I mean, I don't know if anybody has to really be there, but I guess we'd have to find out. That'd be good.
Yeah, I guess I would ask that somebody volunteer to not only find out what needs to be done, but if there is something more than just clicking a button, that someone takes the responsibility to run that part of the meeting, because that's not something I have any time to investigate on how that works. And I don't want to have a meeting if 3 of us are intending to be hybrid and then we can't connect. I think that would be detrimental to what we're trying to do as a community.
Well, since I made the motion, I will find out what I can before the meeting as to what needs to be done and how it has to happen. And I will take responsibility. I was doing this as an accommodation to kind of soften the issue about the meet and greet. And, hopefully that we all get a chance to at least see each other. We haven't seen each other for a while, although at town meeting we did. I wasn't trying to make this a big production, but I get it. If we're going to make it hybrid, we should at least understand the technology about how to make it hybrid. And I will follow up on that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that, I have no problem meeting in person if members feel that they need a connection. I think maybe in my business world, I'm so used to these meetings and I feel like I'm comfortable with members from here. And we got a great introduction from Zach and Lawrence initially. So I'd love to meet you in person, but I feel comfortable with knowing people. But if everyone else prefers to go in, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure, again, we have a very good productive meeting here where usually 8 or 9 of us are attending the meeting and then we're all productive. I just don't want to have a meeting and there's just 5 of us because the other people couldn't hook on or aren't able to come. So I think there was a motion and a second to look to have the next meeting hybrid. So I don't think we need to vote on that, but I will be happy to put that on the agenda. that way, subject to us just getting some more information about technology.
A motion to adjourn may be in order.
Cindy,
Yes.
I don't mind Buzzy coming with a mask on, but I don't want him to bring his ghost gun.
I may end up putting a muzzle on you instead.
Hmm.
If Fuzzy wears the mask, I'll put on a muzzle for you.
Yeah, we'll pat him down.
I think we already adjourned, by the way.
Yeah, I think we're good.
So there's a motion to adjourn. I guess you need a second. I will second it.
No, I think we've adjourned.
Mine
Oh, I
was a suggestion, but I'll make it a motion then.
I don't think we adjourned,
We haven't. Yeah,
but we should.
I think a motion is stable.
All right, so Bob, we're motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Bob, Hugh,
Yes.
Buzzy,
Yes, again.
Gary,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and Karen, yes. All right. Good
Yeah.
night, everyone.